Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today we're reviewing for you Beyond Good and Evil 20th Anniversary Edition on the Nintendo Switch. This review was originally written by the wonderful Ollie Reynolds and has been adapted for video by me. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. Considering the lengthy, ongoing development of Beyond Good and Evil 2, and the subsequent grilling from eager fans that Ubisoft has brought upon itself over the years, it's easy to forget just how flipping good the original game is. First released on PS2, Xbox and GameCube at the end of 2003, Beyond Good and Evil was one of the most unique adventure games of its day, showcasing a world that Nintendo itself would be proud to call its own. This 20th Anniversary Edition remaster updates the experience with revamped visuals, improved performance, sort of, we'll get onto that, quality of life upgrades, and more. But is it still as enjoyable now as it was 2 decades ago? Well, the answer is thankfully a resounding yes. Ubisoft's re-release is easily the best way to experience Jade and Pey'j's epic journey on Nintendo hardware, but it's not without a few niggling little issues. Touching on the visuals to start, Ubisoft has done a great job upgrading Beyond Good and Evil without losing any of the original's charm. Real-time lighting has been implemented, which gives the environment and its cast of characters a completely new lease on life. Certain models have been updated to look a bit, well, better, and this is perhaps most apparent with Jade's uncle and sidekick, Pey'j, whose eyes are slightly larger and more animated than we're used to in the original. All told, however, the game is definitely boasting a "this is what you remember the game looked like back in the day" vibe. It's familiar, yet refreshed, and that's just how we want it. We feared that the upgraded visuals might result in some iffy performance, but the game manages to maintain a mostly stable 30 frames a second. This dips occasionally when you're dealing with certain effects like explosions or cascading water, but it's minor enough that it never really got in the way of our enjoyment. Now, it is worth noting that other versions of the game on PS5, Xbox, and Steam all run at 60 frames a second, and even the Xbox 360 version of Beyond Good and Evil HD runs a lot smoother on Series X thanks to the Xbox's FPS boost feature, albeit without the visual enhancements seen here. It's undeniably a tough pill to swallow, but in isolation, 30 FPS feels just about adequate. A similar level of care and attention has been given to the game's soundtrack as well. More than 15 tracks have been completely re-recorded under the supervision of the original composer Christoph Herral. I apologize to Christoph if that's not how your name is pronounced. Most of it sounds familiar, and you'd be forgiven for thinking that nothing has changed if it's been a while since you played the GameCube version, but it helps to modernize the audio nicely. The true joy of Beyond Good and Evil, though, lies in its gameplay. Yes, many aspects have indeed aged quite a bit in 20 years. The combat feels slightly stilted, the camera can often get in the way, and some of the UI feels like it could have benefited from a bit of TLC. The thing is, though, there's just so much variety on offer that it never really feels like a chore to play. One moment you're fighting off a bunch of giant bugs, the next you're taking a photo of a curious-looking bird in the city center before hopping into your hovercraft and participating in a race. Progression is largely linear in that you simply follow the story beats and make your way to designated locations. Exploration is absolutely encouraged though, since you'll need to complete tasks in order to gain pearls. These pearls can then be spent at the Mamago Garage, which is rocking some updated music by the way, to gain hovercraft upgrades, an endeavor that is often mandatory if you want to reach certain locations. The pacing is honestly exceptional, and it never feels like any one gameplay mechanic outstays its welcome. Aside from the main game, the 20th Anniversary Edition adds a few tasty bonus features. You've got a new speedrun mode, which should allow for some significant longevity, along with new outfits for both Jade and Pey'j. Finally, a comprehensive gallery section dives into the production of the game and includes both still images and video. What's great is that each section is enhanced with contextual information, walking you through each segment and its relation to the main game. It's not on par with, say, Atari 50, but it's clear that this has been crafted with great care. Ultimately, it would be easy to dismiss Beyond Good and Evil as a jack of all trades, but truth be told, its photography mechanics, melee combat, vehicle racing, code deciphering, and world exploration are all wonderfully executed, resulting in an experience that is truly like no other. There's no doubt that the game has aged considerably in many respects, but much like The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, the positives greatly outweigh the negatives, and at such a reasonable price, we've no qualms recommending this to both new and returning players alike. Nintendo has been getting some heat for the pricing of its recent Switch remasters, so to see Ubisoft go beyond with Beyond Good and Evil, making it so lovingly restored for such a reasonable price, is just a true joy. The 20th Anniversary Edition boasts some lovely visuals and auditory upgrades, an excellent gallery feature, and a whole bunch of meaningful extras that make this journey back into Hillis well worth taking. Granted, the 30 frames per second performance on Switch is a bit of a bummer compared to other platforms, and there's no denying that the experience has aged considerably in certain areas, but the gameplay is so varied and the world is so unique that you'd be remiss not to give this a shot. Welcome back, Yade. Beyond Good and Evil 20th Anniversary Edition, you're getting an 8 from us. You've reached the end of the review. That means it's time for Alex's personal thoughts, and I have wanted to play this game for, well, probably about 20 years. I was always vaguely aware of it, you know, in all the GameCube magazines and stuff like that, and people saying, oh, it's amazing, and I was like, but it's a photography game, you know, I couldn't quite get my head around it. I was an idiot. I was a 12-year-old idiot. But all the positive press intrigued me, and it looked fun and different and interesting, and yet I never got round to playing it. It's just one of those things that just kept slipping me by. And so having finally played it for the first time, yeah, I can see why this is so celebrated. It's a really good game, and it really ticks a lot of boxes for me personally as well. I do want to address the performance on Switch very quickly because, all things considered, this game should easily be running at 60 frames a second on Switch. There is no real excuse for it running as poorly as it does. If it ran at a solid 30, I'd forgive it, but there are certain instances, like there was just this one point when Pey'j was he just breathed out and there was just some minor smoke effect, and the game, the frames just sort of like didn't go down to a crawl, but there was significant dropping, and I was like, what? There's no excuse for that. But having said that, I've enjoyed the game so much that it hasn't bothered me. I can look past it. It's still, I would argue, unacceptable, but the rest of the game makes up for it. You win this time, Ubisoft. If you're unfamiliar with the game and you're confused about the photography side of things, I would describe it most like Metroid Prime, the scan visor and that. I would say that's probably closest to it, and it works really well. You take a photo, you get money as well. There's real incentive to take photographs of everything you see that's an animal, or an amoeba, which for some reason is considered an animal in this game, but let's not split hairs. But as Ollie made clear in the review, it is not just that. There are so many different gameplay mechanics going on. The combat it's simple, but it's fun, and because you're not doing it all the time, it doesn't outstay its welcome. It doesn't become tedious. It's sort of fun, and sometimes you'll do a combo, and at least when I've done it, I've not quite understood why, but I'm still very happy when it happens. And then you got all the hovercraft stuff, and it's just wonderful, and more to the point, everything is wrapped up in this wonderful world with great characters who are brilliantly voiced, I might point out, which unfortunately is a bit of a rarity. They're expressive, you genuinely care about them. It's a brilliant game. I can see why it's so celebrated, and I am just so disappointed that it's just not a little bit better running. You know, just 30 frames a second on the Switch. It's a GameCube port. I know that there's stuff that they've put in there, and it seems to be various effects or maybe shaders or something that are dragging down the performance, but it shouldn't be the case. But having said all that, I still highly recommend this game, like really highly. As I said, I've been wanting to play it for 20 years, and sometimes when you get that idea in your head of, oh, I really want to play this game, and you finally get to it and it doesn't quite live up to the hype, this time, it did. Beyond Good and Evil 20th Anniversary Edition, it's a good.